Welcome to Renovating a Large Triple Expansion Model Steam Engine. This is part 4, making the second flywheel and fitting it to the engine. The first thing I have to do is make an extra long mandrel, and here it is. The machining operations on this second flywheel were virtually the same as on the first, so I haven't covered them in any detail. But if by any chance you do want to see the machining of this second flywheel in greater detail, please re-watch part 3. In part 3 I show how I made a flywheel for the engine, but when I put the flywheel onto the engine it just didn't look right. I wasn't happy with it. I wanted quite a chunky flywheel, but I didn't want the weight. And by machining two flywheels and putting them side by side, I can machine away quite a lot of the weight. The flywheels are a really good fit on this mandrel, not slack and not tight, and they're not going to be Loctited in place either. The second flywheel is going to be Loctited to the first flywheel, but not to the shaft. So the only thing that's going to be holding these two flywheels onto the mandrel is the grub screw that I fitted in the last episode. And here I am, tightening it onto the shaft. That should hold the flywheel sufficiently to allow me to turn it. And of course the second flywheel is going to be Loctited to the first. And here's the process. These flywheels are quite accurately machined, so they will fit together well. As you can see, one is larger than the other, and that's because I'm going to machine the larger flywheel down a little bit so it pushes further onto the shaft. And here I'm applying the Loctite, and now I'm applying the second flywheel to the first. And just in case you are wondering, the second flywheel is smaller than the first one because the first flywheel would not clear the engine bearers, the second one does. I'm using the brass collar that I also used in video number 3 to press the second flywheel up against the first flywheel. And while the Loctite is curing, I'm going to have a cup of tea in my special cup. And with the miracle of modern video, I'm now back in the workshop with my cup of steaming tea. And of course it's too hot to drink, so I thought what I would do is take this opportunity to show some interesting things that live in my workshop. This is a very small oscillating cylinder engine, and it runs very well indeed, as you can see. On a shelf in my kitchen in the house I have a Crick Alexandra, which is a very small steam launch, and this engine will be ideal for that, and I'm going to use this boiler too. The original power plant in the Crick Alexandra was a cheddar plant, and I sold that to a friend of mine, and it just sits on the shelf devoid of any kind of an engine. So that's a project coming up, and here's another one. This is called a Kingdon boiler, and it's been on the bench for a while and it's quite oily. It really is well made. This is potentially a coal-fired boiler, but I'm going to build this into a steam plant and make it so I have the option to use a gas burner too. I bought all the steam fittings for it, but I've never really got round to doing anything with it, and it just sits at the back of the bench. It's a thing of beauty is this boiler, so very shortly I'm going to do a feature as I build it into something quite interesting. The first thing I need to do is to obtain some brass for the top cap. The top cap of the boiler will also support the chimney. This is such a nice boiler, I'm going to give it a bit of a steampunk treatment. I'm going to make a base for the boiler with 4 columns to support it, so I can lift it off the base to clear the ash. I will do this job as soon as I get some spare time. It won't take very long. Now that the Loctite has cured, and hopefully the second flywheel is firmly attached to the first one, it's time to machine it. And again, I'm not going to do a long drawn out video about machining flywheels. I think you've seen enough of that in the last episode. It took quite a while to reduce the outside diameter of the first flywheel, but to make the video more watchable, I speeded up the process in the editor. And even though the stub mandrel is supported at the tailstock end with a live centre, as I mentioned earlier, the only thing holding these flywheels to the shaft is a grub screw. So fine cuts and plenty of passes is the order of the day. This is a very simple job, just a few thou at a time, and the tool goes back and forth until the first flywheel is approximately the same diameter as the second one, after which I take a final cut down the entire length of the flywheel, and then I clean it up with a piece of sandpaper. But not before I machine a groove in the centre between the two flywheel halves, because if I don't do this, the gap between the flywheels is very slight, but it looks like a crack, and that's not good at all. You may think this is a real long way round doing this job, and yes, you are correct, But first of all, I thought, will it look okay with one flywheel? And no, it didn't. The flywheel was a little bit too thin, and it just didn't look right. And in case you're thinking, well, this man's an idiot, why didn't he just buy a billet of steel and machine that? But a solid steel flywheel would have weighed a good bit more than this does, because the space between the two flywheels is more or less hollow. So therefore there's a considerable weight saving, which is good for the engine. A final clean up with some Scotch-Brite, and let's have a look at it on the engine now. This finished flywheel is a very good fit on the crankshaft. By very carefully shaping the hole in the centre of the flywheels, they now fit very well on this slightly tapered crankshaft. And you still have to tap it into place for the last 1/4 of an inch. All I have to do now is just nip up the grub screw with an Allen key, and this will stop the flywheel from working loose. And in my opinion, the flywheel looks a lot better closer to the first of the main bearings. It's never a good idea to have a flywheel, particularly if it's a heavy one, sticking out too far on the crankshaft from the main bearing. I've seen quite a lot of engines with crankshafts at least up to 5/8 of an inch in diameter, with bent crankshafts, owing to having a very heavy flywheel on the end of the crankshaft, too far from the main bearing, and all it takes is a quick knock with something to bend the crankshaft. So now I need to paint this flywheel, and I've painted it. Well, one side of it anyway. I'm now going to show in great detail the painting of the other side. This is Humbrol red. So why am I painting this flywheel red? Because I like the colour red on a flywheel, on certain flywheels on certain engines. And on an engine like this, which is a glass case model, it should look okay. If when the engine is finished and I don't like the colour of the flywheel, I can remove the paint quite easily. Now what's this? The following is a useful tip. This little thing is a Mamod funnel for filling a Mamod boiler, and it has a very useful secondary function as a support for freshly painted pieces of metal. So that's about it really. This is the original flywheel from episode 3, and this is a finished flywheel that's been painted from episode 4, and it's currently on the engine, but I'm taking it off the engine to put it on the bench so the paint can dry. And now an extra special feature, you can watch the paint dry. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful.